Hey, folks, welcome to the Intrepid radio program, the pre-show. That's all we're doing here right now for the next 3 minutes is just getting all set up. So welcome to everybody who's listening. We go live on the radio station over at subspace.radio at 3 minutes after the top of the hour. So until then, we're just whistling Dixie. So that's set up, and that's set up, and that's set up. I think we're set to go. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to the program. Glad to have you here. We're having flooding in our basement right now as I speak. Rainey's over there just clearing some things out in her studio. It's not as bad as it was when we had all the flooding rains a couple of months ago, but it's bad enough. So, and because we rent the house, we're not going to do anything to fix it. So that's not going to get fixed until we decide whether or not we're going to buy the house. So there it is. Flooding sucks. Yeah, it's not flooded as in, ankle deep or anything. It's got huge puddles that run in on two corners of the house under the windows. It's because when they put the window wells into this house, they did not put them in properly. They're not egress windows, but they didn't dig them out properly. There's no gravel in them, anything like that. So the water goes up and you see it building on the window from the outside, and then it just starts leaking in. So there's no way to stop it. So we are having snow tonight, but it rained all day first. So we're having a little snow tonight. Could be up to 6 inches, maybe up to 8 inches. And the nice thing about snow this time of the year, maybe the bad thing for our basement, is that it all melts in a day. So we'll get 6 to 8 inches, but it's going to be pushing 50 on Sunday. So there you go. So we're in our warm weather. We're pre-spring, which gets pretty wet up here. And we can have blizzards at the end of March, at the beginning of April. And we've had over a foot of snow in a blizzard overnight this time of year. 3 weeks on even, but then it goes away in a day or two. It's gone. So we've got about 20 seconds left. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go dark, sit tight. We'll be right back with the beginning of the show.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey folks, happy Friday evening. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on subspace.radio. That's where you pick this show up in its audio format only. You can come on over to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts to see the live video simulcast and also join the live chat room with all the Intrepids that are in here now. Thanks, Carlene. Carlene just became a new member. Good to have you. And I see Captain Stuart Foley over there in the chat room a little earlier. So welcome, Stuart. I got to put on my glasses. My eyes are all fuzzy. I've been working all day staring at my computer. And so I take off my glasses and everything gets fuzzy. So I'm going to have my glasses on most of the evening so I can read the chat room. Pearson Castile says, man, the weather really has been bad today. Wayne, Arkansas has heavy damage. Yeah. And it's not bad weather up here right now. It's just early spring weather, which is mixes snow and rain. And the only problem we have is that this house, it's got these windows that are just not done right down in the downstairs. So they leak when it gets too wet. So that's something we'll have to fix. We don't own the house yet, and I would love to have the owner fix it, but she didn't want to put the money into it.
Not quite the window that leaks, not to interrupt.
Go ahead and interrupt. That's my beautiful wife. Come over here and talk.
The walls fill up with water.
Yes.
And don't drain, and then it comes through the window.
So here's Rainy. How you doing?
My socks are wet.
Oh, I'll bet they
My
are.
pants are wet.
Wear shoes down here.
I already
So it's
came
just
down,
two
everything's
corners
wet.
of the other side of the downstairs flood out.
The old window works fine. The new windows, it's the
It's
wells.
leaking.
It's
And
the
you
wells.
it's the window wells. So there it is. It's what I said in the pre-show.
I need a post hole digger and it to warm up so I can go dig them out.
That's what you want to do, huh?
That's what I want to do.
See, that's my wife. I don't get to do manly duties around here. She does them all. So the things that are stereotypically manly duties. So yeah, we got to dig out those window wells and dig them out and put gravel down in there, dig them deeper, and then hopefully we won't get too much leakage into the basement when it gets really wet. So haha, Rainy is wet, said Grumpy Stack. Nice. She's not here to hear that now. She walked out. So so greetings to everybody. If I didn't say hello in the pre-show, Arlene, good to see you. Wet feet suck. Yeah, they do, especially when you're wearing socks. And I blew about 20 minutes before the show, I blew the circuit out. And silly me, I had a heater going and I plugged in the iron to iron my shirt. Oh, blew the circuit. Everything went off. My computer went off. The internet went off because that box is down here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I walked across the floor to go to the fuse, not a fuse box, it's a circuit breakers. And guess what? Wet socks. That's how I discovered we had water in the basement again. So that's really frustrating. I want to get that taken care of. If you've got water in your basement, guys, I'd like to get a specialist out here to tell us what we need to do. We do know we have to dig out the window wells. And you know what? I'm not going to put money into this house until I know we're buying it, if we buy this house. So that was one of the first things I asked the woman that owns it. She's an older woman. They own a big ranch out here about 30 miles from here. 100 horses and 1,000 acres out here in Wisconsin. And they own this house. She has it for rental property. And I said, I'd like to kind of talk to you about buying this house. And she said, maybe. And that's as far as it went. So we'll see what happens with that. And Carlene says, we have a brook in our basement. Yeah, there you go. A literal one. I do have a friend out in Virginia, West Virginia. They've got a spring underneath their old Federalist style house. It was built pre-Civil War. And the house was built over the spring. And they've got a little tiny river that runs inside river. It's that wide from that spring that's been running ever since. Is that the kind of spring you have in your basement? A brook, I should say. So greetings to everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to talk about a mysterious topic tonight. And it might not come across as being so mysterious, but it's one of those great mysteries of history. We're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant. And I thought, well, Fridays are ghost days. What should I talk about when it comes to ghosts and things like that? And I thought, hey, why not hit a topic that it doesn't necessarily have to be about ghosts? Could you fit the Ark of the Covenant, that whole issue, into a paranormal or a supernatural issue? Sure you can. And I thought, I think I want to talk about that because I love talking about this and this kind of stuff. And so we're going to set the little stage. We're going to talk about what the Ark of the Covenant is. For those of you who don't know much more other than what you learned in Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, we'll talk about the Ark of the Covenant and give you a little background on it. And hey, Susie Q. She said, we'll be back. I just saw, love you guys. And she said she'll be back. So all of you who are here, by the way, and I didn't say hello, it's okay. I'll say hello as we go along. Steph Cuervo Queen. My feet feel good wet, especially when I'm getting a foot leg massage in the hot tub. The hot tub. Remember that Eddie Murphy bit doing James Brown? The tub is so hot. It's hot. It's a hot tub. So, Sarah Yusuf, you mean it's not locked away in a government warehouse? It just might be in a big wooden crate, as far as we know. Oh, I should show you while I'm at it. I thought this because it's sitting right here. And if you're listening to the radio, you can't see this, but I thought this was cool. Since you mentioned Locked in a Warehouse, this was a Monopoly game I found. Look at that. Indiana Jones Monopoly. And comes in this wooden crate. And it's very, very cool. And so I've had that for a few years. I think I found this at either a thrift store or a garage sale, if memory serves. And I've had it so many years now, I can't remember where I got it. And there's nothing super, super special about it, except, your hotels are your little Arks of the Covenant. You can see those. See that? Little Ark of the Covenant. Your houses are throw me the whip, I'll throw you the idol. So it's the little idol from Indiana Jones. And, stuff like that. Other than that, the money's the same. And uh-oh, I just dropped a piece. Oh, I dropped 2 pieces. Let me get them. Get them now or they'll be forever lost. So there you go. Just because you mentioned the crate in the warehouse, there it is. There's my my Indiana Jones Monopoly game. And it's just cool having it sit out because it looks like that. So pretty cool stuff. Let me set it over here. Out of the way. So, hey, Barbie D. Good to see you. So many theories have been brought up about the Ark, says Matthew Sainsbury. Yeah, they have. And we're going to kind of cover that. I don't want to give away the ending here. But if you are a biblical scholar, if you've listened to any biblical scholarship on the Ark of the Covenant, it probably doesn't exist anymore. It was probably destroyed. And we'll get to that and we'll talk about that. That doesn't mean that's what happened, though. So let's get over to that. Matthew Sainsbury, yes, it had cherubim and sphinxes. I don't know if it had sphinxes. It had cherubim with outstretched wings over the mercy seat. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that tonight, unless Matthew beats me to it. So let's take a look at this now. Let's just kind of get into what the Ark is, where it came from, why it was built, what it was for, where might it be now, all of that kind of stuff. So I've got 6 Bible facts that you should know about the Ark of the Covenant, and you may not know them. Now, you may ask yourself, why do I need to know anything about the Ark of the Covenant? You don't need to. It's just cool facts. And it's something that's become pop cultural. I've already mentioned Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what most people know about the Lost Ark of the Covenant. I know that there were people, if you didn't go to church or seminary or Bible school, there's many people that watched that movie, they had no idea what it was. They didn't even know what was contained in it. And so we're going to talk about that tonight, so you get an idea. But the Ark of the Covenant, it's more than just biblical history. It's mythical. It's got its own legendary mythical status. And it's elevated to soaring heights of fantasy and legend after disappearing centuries ago. It would have disappeared sometime in the 400s to the 500s BCE, before the time of Christ. And people have long sought to discover the truth about it. And Hollywood has elevated it to all this superstardom by making it the primary focus of Steven Spielberg's blockbuster Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And while a fun time, a fun romp, a lot of action and adventure, the film fails to capture the spiritual significance of the golden chest, because it disappeared. Many misconceptions about God's Ark rose after that. While the Bible is silent on the Ark's ultimate fate, there are still centuries of history covered in the Bible that detail its construction, the use of worship, and how its presence testified to the power of God. And I want to tell you something I'm going to get into. I've heard a lot of people in talking about the different mysteries about what may have happened to the Ark of the Covenant. They will talk about, it's like a transmitter to God. Or it's, as you heard in Indiana Jones, that was one of the going things. Well, if we ever find the Ark of the Covenant, what's it going to be like? Are we going to remember? Because in the Bible, nobody could touch the Ark of the Covenant because this was God's dwelling place. There was even Uzzah, who tried to stabilize the Ark once. They were taking it on an ox cart and moving it, and it tipped, and he put his hands on it, and God killed him. And somebody said, well, why'd God kill him? He was saving the Ark. Well, there was a holiness issue there and the power of God. But would that still be present in the Ark? Keep one thing in mind as we talk about this. The Ark of the Covenant, what gave it its power was not the dimensions or the shittim wood it was built out of or the overlaid gold or anything like that. That's not what gave it its power. So you could have that box was nothing, according to Scripture, until God's Shekinah glory came down and settled on the mercy seat, the place between the two. I should grab this just as an example as we're talking. You can still hear me way over there, but I've shown you this before. This is just a little mini Ark of the Covenant that I got when I was in Egypt. Now, this is one of the many versions of the Ark of the Covenant that you could see. Nobody knows exactly what it looked like, but I've got this little mini version of it here. Oh, there's still a piece of tape on here from the move. There was a piece of wrapping around this. That's still on there. I'll get that off another time. So here, we'll just do it this way. We'll turn it around. And so this is basically what the Ark of the Covenant looked like. And this is an Egyptian bark shrine. Is what this is. That's all the Ark of the Covenant was. It was an Egyptian bark shrine. Egyptian, why would you say the greatest artifact, the mercy seat of God's presence in the tabernacle of the covenant and eventually in the temple in Jerusalem? Why Egyptian? Because everything Moses did when he created Judaism out of whole cloth, he created Judaism. It didn't exist before the Exodus. And he codified it and made it into something. And when they were building the artifacts for the tabernacle and all of that, they were all based on models in Egyptian culture. And so you find these without the lid. You don't always see the cherubs on it, but you go to Egypt and you look on the walls of a lot of these old inscriptions that are 3,000 years old and so on. It looks like this. You see these things constantly carved into the walls in stories of the different pharaohs and the different grand viziers and things like that. But there's a little model of the Ark of the Covenant. I keep things in there. It's not the tablets of the law in miniature. I've got, I may have shown this all to you before. I've got these bottles in here. That is, you can see there, all those little bottles with the corks. That's sand that I took from the tomb of Senenmut. That guy back there, that statue right behind me. I've talked about him a million times. But there is sand from the tomb entrance of Senenmut. And I've got 4 vials of that stuff left. And then I've got little bits and pieces of rocks and things from different tombs that were important, that related to the story. So there you go. So the Ark of the Covenant. According to the biblical story, the Ark was supposed to be the dwelling place of God, that God's Spirit would come down and settle on the ark. And they even had a big ceremony. They gathered all the people, Moses did, and Moses is standing there, and God's Shekinah glory descended like a cloud and settled on the ark, the mercy seat. That's why I brought that up. That was this space right here between the cherubs. This was called the mercy seat, and that's where God dwelt. And because his presence was there, the ark became lethal to touch, because no man could see God's face at any time, all those different prohibitions or explanations of God. And so when the ark was occupied by God, God was in Israel and so on. That's where God sat. And so what made the ark lethal to human touch, according to the scripture, was not the box. The box is wood overlaid with gold, with a couple of angels on the top, or cherubs, seraphim. And that's not what made the box lethal. The box wasn't some kind of homing device for radio waves or some kind of intergalactic thing that once it was built this certain way, this certain weight, this certain shape and measurement, and the gold and so on. That is not what made. Hey, thanks, Rat Rex. And by the way, I won't give away your code there unless you want to. A Rat Rex is, I know her, and she is, there's something about the spelling of that name. So good to have you here, by the way. And so the Ark of the Covenant was an inanimate object. It was an expensive object. It was overlaid with gold. It was a symbol of worshiping God, Jehovah God. But what gave the Ark its special power, again, not the box itself, but the presence of God. And when the presence of God was on the Ark, no man could touch it. And they put it in the Holy of Holies, and first the tabernacle, which was the tent version of what became the temple that Solomon built later, the same layout, same dimensions. But the tabernacle is what they had when they were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And then they pitched that tabernacle tent in Shiloh, I believe it was, when they came into the land. And it was still a few hundred years later before Solomon built the actual temple. And this ark was a place, it was in not just the holy place, the inner chamber, but it was in the inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, as you've heard it called. And that's where the ark dwelt, and nobody could go inside the Holy of Holies. It was behind big curtains, thick curtains. They were like a foot thick with all the fabric that was in them. And the only time anybody could go in there was one day a year. The high priest could go in to do sacrifice of blood for the people. And it was sheep's blood. And they used to tie a rope around the ankle of the high priest, because if he should happen to get struck dead by God for any reason, nobody could go inside the Holy of Holies. So that was the tradition. They tied a rope around his ankle, I'm sure a ceremonial looking rope. And sometimes they had bells on, because they could then drag him out without anybody having to go into the Holy of Holies. So the ark itself was not dangerous to touch. The ark with the presence of God on it was lethal to touch. And of course, this is the story that we're given. This is the legend. This is the mythology, Judeo-Christian mythology. So that's the Ark of the Covenant. That's where it started. It was an object of worship. And I will tell you this, when there was a point where it says God's presence left the ark. The ark wasn't built and God's trapped there for all eternity now. God chose to dwell there. Oh, and by the way, this is a good time to re-mention something I've mentioned before. When Moses called all the people together and the cloud descended down and settled on the ark, that was known as, and it says it in the Hebrew scripture, the Shekinah glory of God. Now, Shekinah is a very interesting word. Genderically, it is a female word. The connotation, not even the connotation, the implicit word in Shekinah is female. So, and it's very interesting. You look at guys like, remember Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock? He was a photographer. He did a bunch of photography, nude photography of women, and he called the book Shekinah after that. And so the Shekinah glory of God was, get this, the female presence of God. Now, in Judeo-Christianity, we didn't have goddesses. We didn't have gods, plural. We had God, and that was it. But now all of a sudden, you start looking at these passages, you start pulling them apart and examining them. It says the female presence of God descended from heaven and settled on the ark. And that's whose presence dwelt there. And so God lived on the ark. That is what made the ark lethal to human touch, not the box itself. If anybody wants to tell you, oh, it's a transmitter. Remember the guy from Balak from Indiana Jones? He said, it's a transmitter to God. It's not. It's a wooden box overlaid with gold. So there, I've just crushed maybe one of your pet theories about the ark, if you're into that stuff at all. But that's what it was. So let's get back to, I'm going to go to my notes here. These 6 things I've got. What is the Ark of the Covenant? I've covered a lot of that already. before we dive into a bunch of the facts, you might not know anything about the Ark of the Covenant. And so we have to first establish what it was, or is, if it still exists. The Ark of the Covenant was a housing vessel for the Lord, according to the scripture. And depictions of this rectangular container often had the angels on top, the cherubs, with their wings touching. And the top of the ark was known as the mercy seat. Some of this stuff we've already covered. Priests would have had to carry the ark with long poles. If you remember, again, I'm going to reference this because it's just fun to reference, pop cultural reference. If you saw Indiana Jones, the first movie, what did they do? To pick that ark up, they had to put poles into the rings. And it describes it in scripture that they had to build these rings so they could put long poles. They were kind of like this. Here's your ark, and then the poles would go like this here and on this side. And then they would, the priests would hoist that thing up on their shoulders and carry it. So they didn't touch the ark. So they carried it with the long poles, and if they accidentally touched it, they would instantly die. And the reason for this is because God's glory, the presence, cannot be touched by man, according to Moses. And our sinful natures cause us to keel over if we come into the presence of the Lord without the Holy Spirit residing with us. This is where people will say in Judeo-Christianity, well, God is love. Yeah, God wouldn't do that because God is love and all of this. And here's the one thing we were taught when I was in seminary. When you're looking at tearing the passages apart and seeing what the languages mean, yes, it said that God implicitly was love. But it also said before God was love, God was holiness. And his holiness demanded certain regulations to be kept. Now, you can agree with that or disagree with that. That's just scriptural. So God was holy. And so he set this up this way. Now, inside the Ark of the Covenant were the original tablets of the Ten Commandments. And then also Aaron's staff, which is Moses' staff. Now, you got to figure that ark's only this big. You go, how could a staff fit in that? One of two things. Either it was a staff that, not like Charlton Heston had in the Ten Commandments where he's got the big staff. It might have just been like a shepherd's staff, about 3 feet long. Whack the sheep and walk along. Or it also said that the staff, when it was placed in the ark, it shriveled and twisted and bloomed. And there it was in the thing. So they put in the Ten Commandments. They put in Aaron's staff or Moses' staff and a jar of manna. Manna was the stuff that God fed them, the bread that fell from heaven. And if you read in the book of Exodus, during the sojourn in the desert. So each of these represented something important. They represented the law, that's the commandments, the priesthood, which is Aaron's rod, and God's provision, which is conjectured by theologians, but that's pretty much what they think that all meant. And so what's the history of the Ark of the Covenant? Most of the time, since its creation, the Ark of the Covenant stays within the tabernacle, which was that moving tent, the moving temple. And later the temple. But sometime throughout Israel's history, the ark goes on the move. So for instance, the Philistines, the great enemies of Israel under the time of David and before, when the time of the judges, the Philistines managed to capture the ark during Samuel's childhood. Samuel was the prophet. Remember last week, was it? Or was it the week before? We talked about, no, it was last week. We talked about Samuel's ghost and the witch at Endor, how Saul had the witch at Endor call up the ghost of Samuel. Samuel was old and died. But when he was a little boy, before the time of David, he's the one who actually, he anointed Saul to be the king, then later anointed David to replace him. And then he dies before David's even king. So back when he was a kid, the Philistines managed to capture the ark. And they took it to their god in their temple and set the ark in front of their god, Dagon. And the ark causes a plague in their land, according to the story. All of a sudden, they got the Ark of the Covenant, Jehovah's dwelling place for Israel. They've got it in the temple with Dagon. And the Israelites attempt to return the ark, and it breaks their idols, by the way. Plague set out in the land in the Philistines, and then their idol, Dagon, tipped over and broke. They found the idol tipped down, bowing toward the ark, and its hands broken off and things like that. So during another instance in David's reign, and by the way, they tried to send it back. They sent a message, please, please, peace, truce, come and get the ark. And I think they're the ones I think that put it on an ox cart and just pointed it toward Israel down the road and let it go. No man with it. They said, we don't want that thing anymore. Gone. See ya. Good riddance. And of course, it's supposed to be God who miraculously guides the oxen back to the land of Israel. Now, there's an interesting little landmark. It talks about, and this just popped into my head. I can't name the valley, but there's a little valley where the road from the east starts to come into Israel back in these days. And it said there was a big stone, a big standing stone was the marker, and that the oxen came all the way up to that stone because that was the mark of the border of Israel, and they stopped. They just stopped there. And so the priests had to go fetch the ox cart and all of that. Now, you can go to Israel today and stand in that same valley with the same name, and you look down into the plain where the old road was, and there is a big standing stone out there in the middle of the plain. Is that the standing stone where the oxen stopped? If it is, what a cool place that would be just to visit, just to see it, if you're into studying this stuff. So, the ark's captured at another time under David's reign. The Israelites attempt to return the ark, but because a man tries to stop the ark from falling with his bare hands, he dies. And there was a lesson there. You don't break the law. Well, why would God do that when the guy's trying to help? Well, because he did the right thing the wrong way. And it was supposed to be a picture of God's holiness over saving the dude's life. Because remember, even to God back then, it just seems life was cheap. So anyway, another topic. But sadly, the ark disappears from the narrative in the Bible when the Babylonian captivity comes on. The Babylonians sack Jerusalem, they destroy the temple, and the ark goes missing from the narrative in the Bible altogether at that point. And so now that we've established the identity and the historical context of the ark, the 6 facts about the Ark of the Covenant are coming now. But before I say that, when the ark disappeared under the Babylonian captivity, it is Michael S. Heiser, who is a guy I greatly admired. He just passed away very recently. Biblical scholar, a Hebrew scholar. I've quoted him in my books and had some very brief conversations with him. He was a good man. But he is of the thinking that the ark, you know why you'll never find it? He says, because it just doesn't exist anymore. His thinking was, in the biblical text, it says that the Babylonians, they sacked Jerusalem. They took all the people captive, hauled them off to Babylon, and they also took all the artifacts from the temple, all the gold. And it says, and they cut them up and melted down the gold. Doesn't specifically say that happened to the Ark of the Covenant, but it's never heard of again, even in Scripture. So the going thinking, wow, Matthew, are you having a conversation all by yourself over there? I see, like, in the chat room, Matthew Sainsbury, you got like 20 posts, one after another, and nobody else. Somebody talk to Matthew. So, oops, I just turned my notes off. There we go. And so what happened? Was the ark preserved? Did the Babylonians, and by this time, by the way, God had left the ark. So the ark was no longer dangerous. They probably touched it and they probably took a slave, put him there, go touch that thing. I want to see if you live at a party or something with Nebuchadnezzar. Who the hell knows? So they probably broke it up and melted down the gold, is the guess. And so it just doesn't exist anymore. But that's not what pop culture will tell you. That's not what legend will tell you. But there is no historical record of where the ark went after Babylon, other than legend. So here are the 6 things I want you to know. The specifications and the dimensions of the ark. This little box right here. And much like we have the exact dimensions in the instructions for like Noah's Ark, that was given in the book of Genesis. Exodus 25, 10 through 22, those verses describe the process and the parameters for the creation of the chest, the Ark of the Covenant. And the chapter begins, the Lord said to Moses, and begins to outline God's specifications for the creation of objects to be used in worship. And the ark is the first one described. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hit this verse for you, this line of verses. It's Exodus 25, 10 through 22, those verses. Here you go. Here's what this passage says. This is out of the book of Exodus, chapter 25. Have them make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You know what? I'm going to see if I've got a different version here that modernizes that English just a little bit. Hang on a second. Here we go. Let's try this one. This is more in modern idiom, and I like this, the Message. It's a version of the Bible that's written that is true to the original text as we have it, only translated into more modern English. It goes like this. Starts off the same verse. First, let them make a chest using acacia wood. Make it 3 3/4 feet long and 2 1/4 feet wide. So that thing was about like that and about like that deep. And he says, cover it with a veneer of pure gold inside and out, and make a molding of gold all around it. So the molding, this stuff around the edges. And cast 4 gold rings and attach them to its 4 feet. So the rings were attached down here to the feet. That's where they slid the rods through. So 2 rings on the one side and 2 rings on the other. Make poles from acacia wood and cover them with a veneer of gold, and insert them into the rings on the sides of the chest for carrying the chest. The poles are to stay in the rings. They must not be removed. Place the testimony that I give you in the chest. That's the law, the tablets. Now make a lid of pure gold for the chest, an atonement cover, 3 3/4 feet long and 2 1/4 feet wide. Sculpt 2 winged angels out of hammered gold for either end of the atonement cover. 1 angel at the one end and 1 angel at the other. Make them of one piece with the atonement cover, meaning this whole cover, they didn't attach these angels. They were built right into the cover. They cast this all as one piece. Probably carved it in wood and then overlaid it all with gold. Make the angels with their wings spread, hovering over the atonement cover, facing one another, but looking down on it. So they would bow their heads onto the mercy seat of the cover of the chest. Set the atonement cover as a lid over the chest, and place in the chest the testimony or the law, the tablets that I will give you. I will meet you there at set times and speak with you from above the atonement cover and from between the angel figures that are on it, speaking the commands that I have for the Israelites. So there was the command that God gave. That's how the ark was to be built. So it was made of the base of acacia wood. It was hardwood. It was scratch resistant. It was known for its durability, and it had a gold overlay. And the poles used to carry the ark were of the same material. And on the top of the ark was a mercy seat, the kaporeth in Hebrew. And the Lord commanded, you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold, one of one piece with the mercy seat. You shall make the cherubim on its 2 ends. So on. We just read that. God's presence settled on the mercy seat when it came into the tabernacle to be with the nation of Israel. The female presence of God, the Shekinah glory. Hey, Brianna. Good to see you. Brianna Learman, she just popped in. Nice to see you. Randall Flagg is here. He says, Nova Scotia, Canada, from the TV show. So, what's from the TV show? The Ark of the Covenant, Nova Scotia, Canada, from the TV show. I missed something earlier. It's okay. We'll look at that a little later. I will. I'll catch up. So, the three important artifacts inside the Ark. Now, these were the 10 Commandments. Remember in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he does the little ceremony, then the French guy does, Balak, and they open it up and he puts his hand, he pulls out dust. But what was in there was the 10 Commandments, Aaron's budded staff, and manna, a jar of the manna. And remember, manna was supposed to rot. It only lasted a day. But this manna they put in there, and it stayed whole. So as a container vessel, the ark carried artifacts that spoke to the key moments during Israel's time in the wilderness. And the second set of stone tablets represented the law, the Old Testament standard of righteousness. Moses smashed, remember, the original tablets in Exodus 32 after the Israelites made the golden calf to worship. He came down and he was pissed off. And he smashed the law. And he had to go up and get God to make another set. So the rod of Aaron was the same rod which God turned into the serpent before Pharaoh, that Moses dipped into the Nile, and the Nile turned to blood, that God had Moses spread over the Sea of Reeds, up in the north of the Red Sea, to part the waters. And however, the moment noted more significant by the writer of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, Paul in the New Testament, was the budding and the flowering of the rod. In the book of Numbers, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 5 books of Moses, the people in Israel began to grumble against Moses and Aaron's leadership, and the Lord had just struck down a group of rebels. And to prove the chosen priesthood of Aaron and his line, the Lord commanded the tribes of Israel to set out 12 staffs, with Aaron's representing the tribe of Levi, and the tribe of God appointed to the priesthood. And they left them. Then they made blue jeans after that. So the Jewish priests got around. And so they left them out overnight. And behold, the staff of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted, and it put forth buds and produced blossoms. And it bore ripe almonds, it says in Numbers 17, verse 8. And for the Israelites, this rod represented the line of the priesthood. And so finally, the cup of manna was clear evidence of God's provision for his people. Manna sustained the Israelites when they wandered in the wilderness after they fled Egypt. And the word manna appears to express their confusion about what it was. Manna basically means, what is it? What is this stuff? So it sustained the Israelites when they wandered in the wilderness. And as they exclaimed upon seeing it for the first time, what is this? They called it manna. And every morning for 40 years, the sweet, flaky, white substance that was similar to coriander kept the Israelites fed, and combined with quail in the evening. And so the Israelites honored God for his kept promises and his miraculous provision by keeping a sample of manna in the ark. So that's what that was all about. That's what was in the ark. So here's the question. Was the ark holy? Now, it can be easy to assume that the gold-plated special vessel that held the law, the symbol of the priesthood, and the proof of God's provision, held a special, perhaps mystical, magical power. However, what truly made it special, what made it important, was the actual manifestation of God's presence. The mercy seat served as an actual seat for the Lord in the tabernacle, and eventually in Solomon's temple. And here the Lord's Spirit indwelled and filled the space as a cloud. The true power of God rested on the ark, according to the biblical account. So let's say we could actually find the existing Ark of the Covenant that's been hidden away for centuries, thousands of years, actually. What if we found that? Would it have that same power? No. It would be a box covered in gold. Doubt if it had the artifacts still in it. But if you ever found it, if it still exists, it would be a box covered in gold. It would not have the power of God on it. So it would be like any other antiquity you could find, and you could handle it. So what was the purpose of the ark? There's the big question. What was its purpose? Because the Lord's Spirit came in all his glory. Few could come into its direct presence. Once a year, as I mentioned, on the high holy day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the high priest entered the temple and sprinkled the blood of the lamb, the sacrifice, on the cover of the ark, on the top, on the mercy seat. And the action atoned for the sins of the whole nation. The priest who went into the temple during the time of Yom Kippur had to be fully right with God in his heart, lest he be struck dead, hence the rope tied around his ankle. And so today, Christians believe Jesus Christ serves as the high priest, in metaphorically, and as the sacrifice, and as it says in Ephesians, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance to the riches of God and God's grace. So, who stole the ark? The Philistines captured the ark after the Battle of Shiloh, where the sons of the high priest Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were killed. Remember, Eli, he was the high priest when Samuel, he had taken in Samuel, or his mother had placed him in tutelage under Eli at the temple when he was a little boy. And so that was Eli. And Hophni and Phinehas were his sons. They were, if you remember the stories about them, they were drunkards, they were womanizers, they were all the bad things you can kind of roll into one. And what did Rex say? Rex, if I were Perry Mason, I would probably follow Jeremiah's footprints, Scotty. Who do you think was the last documented to know the whereabouts? I think it was Jeremiah. It was it might have been Ezekiel. It was during the time of Ezekiel that it disappeared, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head. So it would have been Jeremiah or Ezekiel. Maybe, and it's very possible that they spirited that thing away and put it into hiding, because it was the ark of God. So who stole the ark? The Philistines. After the Battle of Shiloh, they killed the high priest's sons, Hophni and Phinehas. It didn't stay in any one place for very long, as disaster seemed to strike the Philistines whenever they moved what they believed to be a war prize. And from hemorrhoids, they had hemorrhoids. God, according to the passage, I think it's a good sense of humor, or good writing, or it was a funny thing that God did. Yeah, you want to steal my ark? Yeah, I'm going to make your asshole itch. How about that? So he gave them hemorrhoids. And then he plagued them with mice. And no matter where the Philistines moved the ark, trouble followed it. And it culminated in them putting the ark into their pagan temple. And the statue of their false god Dagon was found prostrate on the before the ark twice, and the second time broken. It says in 1 Samuel 5:4, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off on the threshold. And the Philistines had only kept it 7 months, according to 1 Samuel 6:1, because of all the troubles that befell the cities that held the Lord's ark. So there's a big question too. Why did David dance before the ark? It says when they brought the ark to the city, it was still in the tabernacle. David wanted to build the temple of God, and God did not allow him to do it. That befell to his son, Samuel, because, as God put it, David is a man of war and violence. And he says, I don't want him building my temple. You just get everything straight. You keep the land in order, You have the tabernacle in Jerusalem and the Ark of the Covenant there, and your son will build the temple. And so David brought the tabernacle to Jerusalem, and they brought the ark from Shiloh. And it says they went through the streets, that David danced naked before the ark. Now, there's another one of those Old Testament ways of saying things, or old ways, Old English. He more than likely was stripped down to his loincloth, and in the hot sun, he danced all the way from one end of the city of David all the way up to the Temple Mount. And there's a great depiction of this. It's not the best movie to follow the story. I don't know, Ryan, about the Queen of Sheba stealing it. I don't think so, because she was married to Solomon. It didn't disappear for a couple of hundred years after that, according to the chronology. So there's a great movie to watch. It's worth watching. If you're a historian, it's fun, but it's not historically accurate, at least not to the biblical account. But it's a good movie. It's Richard Gere played King David. And this movie was made back in like 1983 or 84 or 5, something like that. And it's just simply called King David. If you get an opportunity and you want to look that movie up, look it up, because it's really well done from a technical standpoint, a production quality. It has the gritty realism of what things would have been like. And frankly, Richard Gere played a good David. The same woman who played the Borg Queen in the movies, Alice Krieg, she played Bathsheba in that movie. And you had Edward Woodward played King Saul in that movie, and a whole host of other actors that you would recognize. Very good movie. Well done. Beautiful to look at. It wasn't Technicolor gorgeous. It was gritty realism and detail-oriented, even though the history sucked that they put in it. Well, the biblical history, okay? The message they try to get across. So you want to see a good movie. In that movie, they show the scene where David dances before the ark all the way up to the temple, or the tabernacle. And that's just a fun scene to watch. The whole movie is a fun movie to watch. So why did he dance before the ark? The last years of King Saul's reign were tumultuous and bloody. And when David came to the throne of Israel, he had to take Jerusalem from the Jebusites and fight back an attack from the Philistines. And after these victories, David felt led to bring the Ark of the Covenant to the capital city. Now, I talked about this when I did that whole series on David about 3 years ago, where I think he wanted to make Jerusalem the cultic center of Jehovah worship. And he wanted control of that. So he wrested it from the Levites, who were in another city, another town, Shiloh. And he brought the ark from there to Jerusalem at their protestations. But then he put it in the tabernacle there. And so it had a brief 3-month stay in the house of a man named Obed-Edom. And it was finally ushered to David's city, Jerusalem. So joyful was David, the Bible records this. It says, and David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment. It says naked in the King James, but wearing a priestly garment. And the Lord's presence should still inspire us to rejoice like David today. For today, we don't need the ark to experience it. And so it was a totally different system of worship. That's a little editorial in there for free. So where does the Ark of the Covenant get its fearsome reputation that led to its portrayal as a weapon in Raiders of the Lost Ark? Remember, Indiana Jones opens the big Bible, and it shows the old etching of Moses and the priests standing on the hillside over the battle, and a beam of yellow light coming out of the ark. And why did Adolf Hitler have interest in it? Because there were stories in the Old Testament where Moses and the Israelites would bring the ark with them into battle, because God would then lead their army and fight for them, and they would win the day. So why does the Ark of the Covenant get its fearsome reputation? There are two incidents in its history that most likely informed this portrayal, where the Lord struck down people who did not treat the ark with the appropriate reverence, and once in the town of Beth Shemesh, and once with a man named Uzzah, who we mentioned at the beginning in the book of Numbers. The Lord gives an explicit command that only Levites may handle the ark, and that if any outsider comes near, he shall be put to death, in Numbers 5:1. You couldn't even get near the ark with a death penalty on it. And so in both instances, Israelites who knew the law chose to disobey and interacted with the Ark of the Covenant contrary to God's word. So the Ark of the Covenant acted as a symbol of God's holiness to Israel, and not abiding by the rules set forth brought about his wrath. And so the power of the Ark was not a thing in and of itself. It was a box. But in the wonder and majesty of Jehovah, those whose presence once rested there, but now indwells in people's hearts. That's supposed to be the new covenant that came in with the Messiah. So that is the kind of the 6 points I wanted to bring out. I've got all kinds of other information, as always, because I never know how fast I'm going to go through my information, or if I'm going to, end up with quiet time. I go, well, that was the Ark story. We have 9 minutes left. No, well, right now we got about a minute and a half before we leave the radio audience. But there's a good reason to believe that the Ark of the Covenant is never going to be found. We can talk about this a little bit in the captain's cabin. But Michael Heiser, he is the author of The Unseen Realm, Recovering the Supernatural Worldview of the Bible. And he's taught many mobile ed courses. Like I say, he is an amazing Hebrew scholar, which now he's passed away. But he says, I dare you not to bore me with the Bible, was one of his chapters. And he explores why he believes the Ark of the Covenant will never be found. He says it's because it was probably destroyed. All right, folks, that's all we got for the radio audience. Those of you listening by radio, we got to get out of here. Stick around for the Captain's Cabin. If you're not here now, why don't you come on over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join the Captain's Cabin, join the chat. You can even call in if you'd like. Radio audience, live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Music rouse you. I had to join in. I just had to join in. Is my screen dark? Oh, my lighting is way down. That's what it is. My screen looked dark to me. So Ryan Gale says Graham Hancock's book on the Ark is pretty good. I haven't read that one. I'd like to see what he has to say about it. Ryan, give away the ending. Does he say the Ark still exists? I'm curious about that. I have not read his book on that. I got to put on my glasses so I can read y'all's comments. So, I did not mention our sponsor for this show. We have a new sponsor, and that sponsor is called Fairy Legs. I do not have a picture ad for them, but I'm going to tell you about them. This is mostly a site for women, but men can buy things too. Over there, it's all a site of women's leggings, and they're all done with fantastic art. And I think there's almost 100 pair of leggings over there, and you can go over to fairylegs.com. Fairy spelt like the old-fashioned Fairy, fairylegs.com. You can go see all of their leggings over there. An easy way to see them as well is if you're on Instagram, you can just go to Fairy Legs Shop, at fairylegsshop.com. Go look them up. Go take a look at these fantastic leggings they have. And as a matter of fact, let's do this. Let's see if I can show you. Since I don't have an ad put together for them, I'm going to see if I can show you their site. Hang on a second. And I'll share my screen with you. And so this will be just a long spoken ad. But they're our sponsor, one of our first sponsors. I haven't gotten sponsors for this show in a long time. So here we go. Let's do it this way. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to share my screen with you for an advertisement, folks. Stick with me because this is pretty cool stuff. Let's see. Present, share my screen. So let's do it this way. Fairy Legs is what we're going to share with you. Boom. Let me make sure my my banners are off here. Turn off the banner. There you go. Okay. Here is the Fairy Legs shop over on Instagram. I'm just going to go through this so you can see what this thing looks like. And if you're into leggings, gals, I know, really bad thing to say, but I couldn't help myself. Or guys, if you want to wear these, that's up to you. But here's some of their, I'm just going to scroll down here and show you some of the things that are on this site. I mean, look at this stuff. These are the kind of leggings they have. They do a lot of witchy things. They do a lot of, what else have they got in here? Witch stuff, unicorn type of stuff, fantasy stuff, all of that. Things like if you look at this up close, there you go. There's some of the leggings that they have on here. And you can scroll down. They've got all different kinds. Is this one of the witchy ones? This is Ostara leggings. There you go. The goddess Ostara. This is their big print ad right there. Fairy Legs. And that gives you an idea of what they look like. And you can go over here to Instagram. Here's one from Field Guy. This is the one for the guys. That is Goddess Mother Lover leggings. Goddess Mother Lover. And there's no descriptions other than that. Other than I know that's a Celtic goddess, I believe. And you can go all the way through all of this, and you can see all the different kinds of stuff they've done here. This is nice. What is this one? Elven Priestess, you can see. On these leggings. You can see Sasquatchy stuff. Look at this. Cartoony. Sasquatch in here. Squatchy in here, it says. And what else we got in here? This one. This is artwork for our Fae leggings. This is the leggings on the Fae. And I want to do this justice so you guys get a really good idea what they've got over there. This is their La Muerta, the Day of the Dead, La Muerta, Mexican. And this is what that artwork looks like. So you can see, you can go over to the Instagram at fairylegsshop.com. Here's one of the witchy ones they've got. Witches. Witches? We don't need no stinking witches. Oh, here's a unicorn. There you go. So, ladies, could you imagine wearing those leggings? They're not just for the gym anymore. Oh, and I've got to say here that they come in all different sizes. They come in regular, plus sizes, high waist top yoga pants, and I thought there was one other kind, but I can't remember. And so you can go over and you can order any of those. I wanted to see if they're, oh, this is kind of cool. Dragonfly. So you can see how they look. They probably wear really well. I personally don't wear leggings, but you can. Oh, look at that. Interstellar Woman, that one's called. How fun is that? You go to the gym, or you go to the grocery store or the library, or you go out on a hot date and you wear your cool leggings. Look at this. Red Riding Hood leggings. What else they got in here? Sasquatchy stuff. Here's one. I saw this one. This is this says for the So Mote Be. This was the one where they said here, sometimes we really love a piece of legging art turned out, how a piece of legging art turned out, and we just want to share it with you so you can get a little more detailed look at what might not be revealed on the mock-ups. So here you go, because the mock-up looks like that, and you don't really see the full artwork. So they've put up their artwork here, and this is Black Witches in America. How about that? And so you can see as you scroll down, there's all these different very cool leggings. Oh, look at that. That's really cool. That's for the Lady Night leggings. And where are those? Oh, right here. Lady Night. Very cool, huh? So there you go. That is our new sponsor. So I've given them now a 5-minute long advertisement. Look at that, worked leather, but it's actually leggings. And here's a witchy one. If you're into witchies, there you go. Looks like Victorian witches, and all these other ones. So there you go. That's our sponsor. I want you to go over. Oh, look at that. Sasquatch High Priestess. Wow, that's pretty neat, huh? So there you go, folks. That is our sponsor. I want you to do me a favor and go over there and visit their site, fairylegs.com. And then you can also go over to Instagram and look at their Instagram. And if you've got an Instagram, go to @fairylegsshop. And you can see all their stuff. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. There we go. Boom. So there you go. I gave them a nice long ad because they're our first big sponsor on this show. And I think you'll enjoy what you see there. And so go over and get yourself some leggings. They have a Cernunnos legging. Oh, they did. I've already shut it off, so I can't go look it up. So there you go. Cernunnos. Cernunnos, it's pronounced. And so you should go over and check them out at Fairylegs Shop over at Instagram. And look who's with us. Uncle Dave is with us.
As Paris Hilton would say, that's hot.
That's hot. Why, thank you, Tara. This episode is bookmark worthy, she said. I'm going to be adding this to my Ark of the Covenant file. Thank you so much. And you know what, Tara? There's so much more to this topic. This was just Ark of the Covenant light. It was to kind of give us now, Dave, I was thinking of you today as I was putting this episode together. I said, the guy that needs to come in and talk with us a little bit about this tonight is Uncle Dave. Uncle Dave, 103rd degree Mason. He knows all of his shite on Ark of the Covenant and all of that stuff. The temple.
It's interesting that you say that because I was at a Masonic retreat and one of our speakers spoke long and hard about the Ark. And so grab your little model for me, your model of the Ark. Hold that up. Okay. Now you see how the wings come together in the front?
Yes.
He doesn't think that's how they are. He thinks that they're open wide there at that point, like an Egyptian throne.
Well, it's interesting.
So that you would be able to sit.
Like the passage we read.
Yeah.
Said that the wings joined and they had their heads bowed to the center. So because the mercy seat was inside of that.
Right. But so his description that he read, the wings in the back were like your model. Okay. Where they're touching him back. That forms the back of the chair. And the wings in front are swept forward more, giving it the ability to be like armrests on the throne.
Oh, sure. That's kind of neat. So somebody can actually sit on it.
And he's seen examples like that with, I think it's Osiris is the wing being, and so that her wings form the back of the chair and then spread down for the pharaoh to sit between the wings in the front.
You talking about my shirt, Michelle? My buffalo plaid.
Yes, that's called a buffalo plaid.
This is my snap front shirt, so I can do my strip teases. I can stand up and I can start going, what? Shwick.
I have a blanket like that.
That snaps.
Very comfortable.
You got a blanket that snaps in the front for your strip tease shows?
That's how I get out of bed in the morning. I just pop all those snaps and pop out of bed.
That's it. Randall Flagg says, ask him about Oak Island and the Templars. What about Oak Island and the Templars?
It's not all there anymore.
Yeah. They found something, though, didn't they?
So my personal feeling on that is there's at least three different deposit dates. You have a Templar deposit. You have a later deposit with the Duke d'Anville or frick, I can't remember. And then a later deposit during the French and Indian War. And then you have a withdrawal that happens in the 1770s.
Somebody withdrew out of the pit.
Not out of the pit. So I believe the pit was an access point when they were bringing in large amounts of gold when they initially did one of the deposits. Okay. And you had the oak tree over top, and they lowered everything down in and entered a vault and then filled all that in, and that there's another entrance someplace on the island that actually accesses the vault by tunnel.
Oh, very cool.
And it wasn't intended to be reached by digging down the pit.
Right.
But in order to haul everything in that they needed to put into the vault and to create the vault, I think they dug the pit to make that easier.
Which is so incredibly inaccessible.
And I think that, so there's Samuel Ball is one of the three that initially finds the money pit and later buys a plot on the land, on the island, right? And now he is a runaway slave that fought with the British during the Revolution and was granted his freedom for fighting with the British. And he bought a plot of land on that island.
He became
and raised
very wealthy
cabbages.
Too.
Okay. Now he became incredibly wealthy. And I don't think he became incredibly wealthy by growing cabbage on that island.
Probably not.
He,
You know, I
bought
don't
a
know
large
when
amount of land on the mainland Nova Scotia, and he ended up buying more than one lot, I think, on the island. And then, but he died a very wealthy man. Now, I think what he did, and they've done some excavation on his house there. His root cellar was unusually deep, they said, for a root cellar, especially for a root cellar of the time.
access to the tunnel system.
I think he tapped into the tunnel. And I think so think of this. Now at the time, the theory wasn't that it was Templar gold. The theory was that pirates had hidden that gold there. Okay? Because we're just past the golden age of piracy. And so my guess is he finds this tunnel, he goes down the tunnel, he finds chests full of gold coin. Okay? Now his fear is that pirates could come back at any time for this. He doesn't want to get caught with a bunch of the gold.
Sure.
Right? He's probably set up his cellar so that he can access the tunnel, but so that it's not obvious that it's been accessed. And no one's going to be walking down the tunnel and find his root cellar.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is what I would do. You walk down there and there's 5 or 6 chests full of gold. You take a small sack and you put a few handfuls from each chest. Who's going to know that those pirates wouldn't have counted every coin that went in the box? They'd have no idea how much was in there. And who would? You're gone for several years and you come back and go, oh, someone's taking coins out of here. How would you know?
You wouldn't.
You wouldn't. And so as long as you weren't too greedy about it, let's face it, handfuls of gold out of each of the chests would be still a lot of gold.
Yeah.
Okay. You could siphon off a lot of gold without making it look like much.
Even by today's standards, if you could take a handful of gold coins and shove them in a pocket, how much money you'd have?
Yeah.
What is gold right now? About 4,000 an ounce or something like that?
Something like that. But even think back then, it still went a long ways.
It was the standard. So
my guess is that's how he came into his wealth. And I think it's written down someplace that when he purchased land, he didn't purchase it himself. He always went through a solicitor, but he always paid in gold.
Oh, there you go.
So
yeah.
And I can kind of see that. He's a black man in that time period. Having a large amount of gold would be a lot of explanation, but you find a lawyer and you pay the lawyer well, and the lawyer then goes around and buys the land from whoever. They're not going to ask a lot of questions.
And this was in the north, of course. So, or was it? It's off the
outer Canada. Bank. That's pretty
Nova
north.
Scotia. Canada. Yep. Nova Scotia.
But but no one's going to ask a lawyer a bunch of questions, and he's not going to ask questions because he's getting paid in gold.
Right. So, yeah, that's very interesting. That's a good theory, a good working theory. You got this guy who grew cabbages and became a millionaire.
Yeah.
On a little island. So.
There must have been some damn good cabbage.
Yeah. Hey, we got Matthew Sainsbury's calling in. There he is. Matthew, how you doing? I saw you come in and pop in and out a couple of times. How you doing?
Because my audio was giving some trouble, so at least I can hear you guys a lot better.
You're still crackling a little bit.
Yeah, still a little garbly.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for doing tonight's show on the Ark of the Covenant, because that is a very hotly debated topic.
It's a fun topic.
Yeah. I mean, about the location of where it is and so. Yeah, because there's a program me and my dad like watching called Touched by an Angel. They had an episode devoted to that, and they mentioned
Touched by an Angel with Michael Landon. They had an episode on the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, Touched by an Angel. So I don't know if you remember Touched by an Angel.
It'd be like Gilligan's Island having an episode on Oak Island.
Yeah, but they're focused on the Ark in this episode. It's called the Holy of Holies, and they seem to think that on the show that they use a reference from 2nd Maccabees chapter 1 or 2, I think it is, where they say that Jeremiah, before the Babylonians came and destroyed the temple, that Jeremiah actually hid it in a cave in Mount Nebo area where Moses would have felt. Yeah. Yeah, it probably is there too. Yeah, because apparently, I think it's in 2nd Maccabees 1, it says that Jeremiah hid it there and sealed it up. until when sometime it will be revealed.
Back when I was in college,
Mhm.
in my freshman year, 78 to 79, they were talking about, somebody was talking about, they had found the Ark of the Covenant, and it was in a cave in
Mhm.
Israel.
Yep, there's an archaeologist right now that claims to know where it's at.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool.
They did show photographs, but they've been barred from the site at the present.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you know how it is in that land when it comes to our attention to as well, because you know each them trying to have legitimacy over that area too. 'Cause even in Egypt, when people do some archaeological digs, I was watching a documentary with Simka Yakovovich.
I
You
like
know where
Shimka.
where Avaris was, where the Hyksos capital was. They say that area, signs show Hebrew people live there, and they say that sometimes trying to dig there is difficult because sometimes the Egyptian militaries be over your shoulder watching every move you make, so
Right.
not that
Well,
very
yeah.
easy. Yeah.
That's very true.
That's cool. Shimka's got his feces coagulated. I like his stuff.
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
almost had him at
that's-
the Paradigm Symposium one year, and we
Okay.
couldn't line up because through the Paradigm Symposium, it happened to be on the same weekend as Passover that year.
Yeah, Passover begins on
And so we
next
couldn't get
Wednesday.
him. We would have had to fly him in and out. We would have had to fly him in Thursday and have him back Friday night in Israel. And it just wasn't going to work. So,
Oh, boy.
and then his fee was a little steep, but
Well, especially for only being there for 20 minutes.
yeah, pretty much. But I would have loved to have had him on at the
Yeah,
symposium.
he has
Yeah,
a
I
very
would
good
too.
documentary.
I'd love to sit and chat with him.
Oh man, wouldn't he be a great guy to talk to?
Oh
Yeah,
my
so he
God.
was able to come in and be there all day Thursday, all day Friday, and fly back. But now Sabbath is on Saturday. So I
Mhm.
don't know how he figured the timing on that, but unless we were figuring, no, it was Thursday and Friday. And then he'd have to fly
Okay.
back late Thursday.
Yeah,
or
because
something like that.
there's
So-
even an Ethiopian legend that King Solomon had married the Queen of Sheba, and they had a son called Menelik. And
Yeah.
Menelik actually took the ark down there to Ethiopia. There's another theory about that too. So that was
Yeah,
also
There is
there's
a theory
claims
about
that there's a church there that protects
Awesome.
the ark.
Yep.
Yes.
There were a couple of explorers, and I saw this show within the last year. I don't think it was a show that got renewed. I think they did their initial 8-episode thing. And as far as I've seen, it hasn't been renewed. But a couple of guys, and they did these really mysterious types of explorations, like the Explorers Club type of stuff. And they did one trying to track down the Ark of the Covenant. And they went to that small church in Ethiopia, and all what they've got is like a little bark shrine. And it's only about that big. But they say it's still under, well, the real Ark isn't actually here, they said, in our village. We're just showing you a replica of it. You have to go over here. And then they went over there. They talked to that old elder, and that old elder was like, you know how these old elders are? They're not like guys that get out of their Mercedes and they've got their office and they're watching TV. You know, he's sitting by his fire and he's smoking a pipe or whatever it was, and he's like, yeah, you'll find the Ark of the Covenant, you'll find it in the bottom, so they go tracking it down. They go way out in the wilderness into these rocky cliff faces. And there's almost no way to get up there. You have to scale the mountain to get up to the path. And they get up there, and this is supposed to be, now you'll meet, it's like, you get the feel of like, and I think one of them may have mentioned, like the Guardian from Raiders of the Lost, not Raiders, not Temple of Doom. What was the third one they did?
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade.
Yeah.
You got the feel of like the knight, the old knight. And so they get up there, and there's a little room carved into the stone face and paintings with the ark and all that's ancient. But there was nothing there. And the guy wasn't there either. It's like, what, did he fall out the window or something and fall to his death?
But at the stone carved church where they supposedly keep it, the priests that guard that all go blind.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And they don't live long after they take their guardianship of it is not very long because they almost all die of radiation poisoning.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Queen of Sheba, they think that had something to do with the Ethiopian. You know, there is a one of the stories of Moses in the Mishnah
Mhm.
is that he was a general,
Yes. Yeah.
and during his earlier life, and that he had gone down to quell a rebellion down in
In
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
And when he quelled the rebellion in Ethiopia, he was going to marry the queen or the princess, and
Yeah.
take the throne for himself. And he gets word back from Pharaoh, supposedly, according to the story, that
That is
nobody
not why
gets
I
the
sent
throne
you
except
down there.
Pharaoh.
Put it
And
yourself.
he told him, get your ass back to Egypt. And so Moses goes back to Egypt. Now, one of the other stories in the Mishnah is that when Moses ran from Egypt after murdering the Egyptian taskmaster, that he didn't just go to the land of Midian, which it says, and marry Zipporah and became the son-in-law to the high priest there, Jethro, and that he went first south to Ethiopia to pick up the princess and married
Wow.
her and lived down there for some time. Then went out
Yes.
to Midian in the Sinai,
Yeah.
far into the Sinai. So it's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, because in the book of Numbers, it does mention that Moses married a Cushite. That's in the area of Sudan, Ethiopia.
Cush,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because that area was very strong one time because they actually were able to conquer Egypt one time and create the mighty 25th dynasty, which were black pharaohs. Yeah, because there's even one in the Bible called Taharka. He's mentioned in the book of Isaiah. Yeah.
Ryan says there's a carving of the ark on a wagon at Chartres. I don't even know how to say it. Chartres Cathedral. So that's interesting stuff.
There is. I just was watching a documentary on YouTube the other day, and they were talking about a site in the Red Sea that
I saw that.
has like a natural land bridge not very far beneath the water.
Yep.
And that on that land bridge are the remains of hundreds of chariots.
Yep. Well, they say, I don't think they got the number down. I didn't know if I heard hundreds, but it said there's a lot. A bunch of chariot wheels and stuff. But then they showed a picture of one of them, which was a picture that years ago had been debunked as an axle to a truck. So now you don't know if somebody... The Egyptians are kind of flaky about the whole Exodus story.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, even now. With the Pyramses and the city of Avaris being under... You can go visit that, but Avaris would have been the Hebrew city where Joseph would have dwelt. And but they don't let you dig there if you even hint that you're looking for sources.
Well, let's just face it. Modern academia and the governments don't want us digging up the history. And look at Roswell. Well, that wasn't a UFO. That was a weather balloon.
Oh,
yeah, they always say that.
Right.
Okay, why? Whatever.
I'll play.
Those aren't chariot wheels. That's an axle from a Ford truck. It's like, right.
So that's interesting. Hey, Matthew, by the way, thanks for being here. Appreciate your input.
Thanks very much.
And so, you look at that story, or that land bridge, and that's a possibility. I think
it's very interesting.
I think it's too far
that was
south.
New info to me, so I thought that was interesting.
It is worth studying and looking at. Of course, I always say about my points of view, I say, look, I'm 98% convinced that the things I wrote about are accurate. That doesn't mean my mind can't be changed. It's like, I believe I know where Sinai was. I believe I know who was what and what was that. Then you start seeing all the stuff about the site in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
That's not.
I didn't realize there was so much confusion about where this damn mountain is. How do you lose a mountain?
Well, they didn't know in the time that from the time the Exodus took place to the time of David. They're saying they didn't even know in the time of David where
I'm pretty sure the mountain was over here. I could swear this is where we left it.
We left it right here. This is where we came. And
God was on the bush, and then we were talking, and then now the mountain's gone. I don't know where the mountain.
We're talking about this mountain in Saudi Arabia that's got, and in Saudis they have barbed wire fences all around. The military guards it. You can't get in it, but it's that site that has all the little earmarks that match identically the story in the biblical account.
Well, it makes more sense if they walked for 40 years that they made it to
Well,
Saudi
they got
Arabia.
there in like 3 weeks, though, after the Exodus. Then they wandered for 40 years. So
We've been wandering around for 40 years. We're only 6 blocks from where we started. What the hell?
yeah, didn't I see that rock before? And but
I think you're
it's got,
walking in a circle.
It's got like an altar that's built out of stone. It's got calves all over it, inscribed all over.
Oh
it.
yeah, yep.
It's got Paleo Hebrew in a couple of spots. Then there's a place where it says when they camped at the base of Mount Sinai that there were 12 camps set up for the 12 tribes and pillars put up and all this. You see the
Why
bases
can't
of
we
all
all
these
just
pillars.
get along?
You see all these little encampments. You see all of this stuff. And then the top of that mountain, it's black, the last third of it. And they haven't really been able to get anything to do.
You burn them out and you're going to turn it black.
Well, they say maybe this had something to do with,
when God comes down in his spaceship, you're going to burn that rock. It's just going to happen.
So look it up. Look up the mountain in. And it's got the big split rock.
Yeah, it has the split. It has a lot going for it.
It does.
If you want to believe what the Bible says.
I mean, if you want to believe that. If you want to change your view, like my view is Sarabat el-Khadim, but you start going over into the west of Saudi Arabia across the Gulf of Aqaba. Now, did they cross the Gulf of Aqaba? No, it says they crossed the Red Sea, and then they traversed. Now, they can go across the north of the Sinai and drop down into Saudi territory, what is now Saudi territory. They wouldn't have to cross 2 seas, and that would make sense for me. Well, either way, it makes sense. If they crossed, it's almost down in the middle of that branch of the Red Sea, where you're looking at it from that perspective. It would be, the branch of the Red Sea, the western branch is the red, also known as the Red Sea, and the
I go to the main branch downtown. I don't like to use those suburb branches. They never know who I am. Right. I like to go to my regular branch.
The eastern branch is called the Gulf of Aqaba. So the Red Sea, I believe it took place up in the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds area up there. They came over from Goshen, which is High Ramses.
And I've seen that theory, and that's a plausible theory too.
And that's plausible, and it's a shallow lake that has that effect that I've talked about this before. That
doesn't make for much of a miracle, but
where the wind blows all night, and it can part the water.
Where the wind blows softly on the reeds.
And I think the thing about that, though, is not so much that could God use a natural event to have did what he did. Remember in the biblical account, it says, and Moses, on God's command, stretched the rod over the waters, and it says, and a strong east wind blew all night and parted the waters. So was Moses an opportunist? He knew how to read all this because he was in Midian for 40 years.
He may have seen it before.
Maybe he'd seen it happen before. I don't know. And that's how they got away. But good stuff. Interesting stuff. So anyway, bloody. So
taking a left turn.
So what's on your left turn?
What do you think of this indictment crap?
I think it's crap to begin with. I think every American, it doesn't matter what party you belong to. It doesn't matter if you like or dislike Trump. None of that matters. What should matter, I saw somebody put up a post say, Trump's indicted. I can't wait to see him in orange and in jail.
Never going to happen.
I didn't take the time. I didn't waste my time with this person. But that's the person, if I was talking to them, I said, is that really what you think we should be doing in America? We should be indicting presidents for something like this?
Do they know nothing about living in glass houses?
That's right.
I just...
No, they don't, because they're convinced that their guy isn't all the things they say Trump is. So,
but I'm not talking about that. I'm looking at hundreds of congressional and Senate people who have been doing insider trading. I'm looking at decades of corruption on both sides of the aisle. I'm not just saying just the Dems. I'm saying people in power, that our politicians who have been corrupt for decades, do they not think that they're creating a precedent where we, the people, can now turn around and lay suit against government officials and start dragging them into court?
What's interesting about this is anybody, it doesn't matter if you're liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican or anything in between. None of that means anything when you have to step outside your box and look back at this case. Don't look at it through the filter of Orange Man bad. I didn't like him in office, so I want to see him taken down. What an idiot you would be if you think that. What you need to do is step outside the political box, look back in and say, is this the right thing for our country to be doing to a former president?
Well, not even that. If the government can twist the law the way this guy's twisting the law to go after somebody, to make him guilty on something that the feds have already said, yeah, we're not going to prosecute this because A, there's paperwork that shows it didn't happen, and B, other stuff. If you're going to twist the law, if they can do it to a former president, they can do it to anybody.
And what do you
and don't think they won't?
They came out with the indictment. They said this 34-point indictment. What are the other points? We don't know yet. We'll know as soon as Trump gets served.
Apparently, the New York Times does.
They know what all the 34 points is. Oh, that's
apparently I was watching a thing earlier today, and apparently the New York Times has the full list. They're not going to print it until Braggs does his thing because he's asked them not to, but he's given them the list.
So you've got this 34-point indictment. I heard an explanation of that today. An attorney was saying, I think it was Trump's attorney, and he was saying, 34 points. What does that mean? He said, you could have the original indictment. He says, and then you could have, he passed that indictment onto this guy or this material onto this guy. The lawyer was involved. Then it came back to him. All these passing between of hands are separate indictments and of the same thing. And he says, usually a judge, when he sees an overabundance of points in an indictment, he says 34 points. He says, you don't see that very often. He says, what that's going to tell a judge right away, if he's a non-biased judge, that's going to tell a judge, you're overloading this indictment to try to bury the fact that you don't have much to go on. So you're going to show a plethora of points. So here's what I think is going to happen. Trump's got to go appear and do his thing in New York. Then he's, you know what I'm eager to see? His speech from the courthouse steps when he comes out after the indictment. Because they're going to release him on his own recognizance, unless they are that. Well,
he's in the protection of the Secret Service. He's not going to run anywhere.
That's right, and he's not going to jail. So he's going to come out and give his speech. I think that'll be an interesting speech and a moment in history to behold. That's going to come on Tuesday after he's in court. Has to appear in court. Now, I heard this lawyer say, he says Trump could go in and plead guilty. He says the prosecutor will probably offer him a plea deal. You plead guilty to this, you pay your fine. Just like they did with Hillary Clinton for the stuff they fined her for with the Steele dossier. Because the Steele dossier, folks, the whole Russian thing, if you haven't heard lately, that was all as fake can be. And it was proven that she paid for it to be made and used it in her campaign with campaign finance funds. And
she should be held accountable for the billions that were spent by the Congress on trials and hearings and BS like that.
$1.3 million or something like that. She had to pay in a fine. Or no, it was like $150,000. So she had to pay that. Well, now they're trying to make this payment for Trump supposedly was paying hush money to a porn star, Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels, yeah.
Supposedly had to pay her for hush money. She's come out in a letter in 2016. Her letter said, I was paid hush money, but I didn't have an affair with him. She said it was Michael Cohen paid me this. I don't know what her reasoning was. She said, Trump and I have never had sex. And she said, I hate to surprise y'all. We've never had sex. And he said the same thing. That was 7 years ago. But so now, and by the way, that all by itself is the statute of limitations for paying hush money under certain circumstances is 7 years or 6 years. It's 6 years in New York State. So it's expired a year ago. But what he's tried to do is push this into being, oh, well, Trump used campaign funds. Well, go ahead and try to prove that.
Well, but there's a letter from Cohen's office.
Yes.
Saying they were never compensated for that money. So Trump hasn't paid anything. Cohen, what happened is
his books listed as legal fees.
Right. But what happened is, so she approached whoever and in an extortion thing, I want X amount of dollars, blah, 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 or I'm going to say this. So Trump doesn't use his primary lawyers because they don't want their law firm tainted with that kind of stuff.
Right.
So and this is nothing new. People that have money like this, people that are bigwigs in corporations, they have attorneys like Cohen who go and do the dirty work.
They do. And they don't keep a track of everything they do. This is your job. This is what you do. You're the cleaner.
You're the cleaner. And so Cohen paid her off and then contacted Trump and said, hey, I paid this woman $300,000 because she said she was going to. And Trump's like, I've never had sex with that woman. I wouldn't have paid. I'm not going to pay for that.
That's right.
You paid it out of your pocket. That's your problem. Now, I'm not paying that.
Look at this point of view, too. I heard this expressed today. They said, how many of us were surprised that a billionaire playboy turned politician may have some skeletons in his closet or have had sex with porn stars?
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me, but we didn't elect him because of that.
We elected him because of what he wanted to do with the economy.
That's right. And so here's what I think. He's going to go in. He's not going to take a plea deal and pay a fine. He's going to fight it. He's going to say, no, I'm not guilty, Your Honor. Now, what could they do at that point? They could put him in jail.
No.
But they can't.
They can't. So, the Secret Service has already come out and said they're not going to detain him. We won't allow it. And they're not going to put him in cuffs. We won't allow it.
Yep. And Sean Struck, you're right. Come on, man. And so I heard somebody put forward today, the same lawyer. He says, you know what would be really good for Joe Biden right now? Is for Joe Biden to pardon him on any federal charge with this. He says, you know why that would work well for Joe Biden? It would make him look magnanimous. He could come out and say, this is not the kind of thing that we should be doing in this country. But of course, Biden doesn't have those original thoughts, so he can't do that. So he said he should pardon him, and he'll come out smelling clean, but he can't vacate or pardon the New York charges. So he lets Bragg can continue doing whatever he's doing and let the dice fall where they may, chips fall where they may. So he could come out looking awfully sweet, saying, I'm in defense of our nation. We don't do this to anybody, and we don't do it to a former president either. But he won't do that because nobody in his circle is going to think that way.
Nope. And
he doesn't have an original thought. So
well, and none of them can see beyond the end of their nose. They're all going to go down because of this.
Yeah. So
and another pundit I was listening to today made a really good point. Even if, with all this distraction going on, Trump stepped out of the election, any other Republican that's running will use this as a weapon and a cudgel against the Dems in running, and the Democrats are going to lose big time because of the way they've weaponized this, how it looks like they weaponized the IRS against that reporter, and just all these things.
By the way, Matthew Sainsbury, he wasn't incarcerated. He's been indicted. Now, all indictment means
he's been charged.
They had a grand jury. The grand jury does not determine guilt. All the grand jury is supposed to do is determine whether or not a case has merit to go to court. That's all they decided. And they said, yeah, this can go to court. So I don't think there was any malice on anybody's part. And remember, they were stonewalled for a while. But my biggest fear is the Democrats are so desperate to stop him that they put a hit on him, says Randall Flagg. Yeah, that's possible too. So, yeah, there's a lot of, all this is the Democrats are scared shitless for Trump to run. And they do not want him to run. They want to stop him from running. And of course, the Democrats can't go, hey, may the best man win and run on their merits. Could you imagine, Dave? Dave, let me tell you a joke.
Because they've just told us we should vote for Trump.
I got a joke for you. The Democrats this year in 2024 are running on their merits. What merits? So they're scared to death of Trump. That's why this is happening, and it's the only reason. If Trump wasn't running, you probably wouldn't see this happen either. So this is all about a pound of flesh of some kind that they want to take out. And folks, if you don't see that, you are not looking with
They're all so
eyes.
far gone with Trump derangement, they've forgotten they're supposed to hide the fact that they're in a swamp.
That's right.
They're just blatantly coming out and doing corrupt things in front of everyone because they think they can get away with it. Well,
I heard somebody say, who was it? It was Chad Prather, kind of the cowboy Republican, does his comedian stand-up, and he does his shows. And he said, you see a Trump indictment, you will see a Patriot A-bomb go off. And now part of this too, I think the Democrats are really hoping that the Republicans or the right does something stupid now. Like
speaking of insurrection, and
talking about Tennessee,
the guy they call the shaman from the January 6th thing.
Yeah.
My brother heard that he'd been released from his 6-year prison term.
You talking about
already.
The Viking dude?
Yeah, that the judge released him because of this new footage that Tucker Carlson started airing.
He's trying to quiet everybody down and tell them to go home.
Oh, and he's getting a tour of the grounds with 4 police officers.
Yeah.
Okay. Including at one point they show the police officer that was supposedly killed.
Yeah.
Pointing things out and walking along with them. So it
was after he was hit on the head with the fire extinguisher.
Which never happened.
We find out. So here's Viking guy.
So the judge apparently was furious that the lawyer for the Congress used him in the manner he used him by showing him only one-sided video and not showing the full evidence of what was there.
Yep. And Tucker Carlson showed that. Why do you think the left is pissed that Tucker Carlson got that footage and showed it?
Well, even McConnell is like, oh, this is dangerous to show this.
So there was footage of the guy being walking with 4 police officers. There's footage of him standing outside and talking to the crowd and going, everybody, it's over. Everybody go home. Be peaceful. He said, be peaceful. Do the right thing. He says, peace in everybody's heart. Do the right thing. And he sat in prison for 2 years over that.
Yeah.
And then you find out what you just mentioned is that they didn't show any of that to the judge.
And so there's this other case that they were talking about tonight. This guy is facing 10 years in prison for an anti-Hillary meme that he posted during the election. Okay.
I know about this.
And basically he said, hey, Dems, in case there's long lines, you can vote by text, and so they're trying to say
that he was
interfering with the election and could have cost hundreds of votes or thousands of votes,
right?
Even though they can't find a single person that was that.
And what this whole Bragg case is? Speaking of interfering with elections, this is all election interference.
Yeah,
they're trying to take out
exactly. Tucker Carlson even pointed out he brought up another meme that was worded almost exactly the aimed at Trump supporters by some woman. And he goes, strangely, she's not being prosecuted.
Yeah, strangely.
It's almost word for word the same meme.
Yep.
And yet she's not being prosecuted. Why is it only the person that poked fun at Hillary is being prosecuted?
Yep. And by the way, Randall Flagg, McConnell is a douchebag.
He is. He's got to go.
He's got to be out.
Those people in Kentucky got to do better than that.
Those old guys. Yeah. And what did Trump just say the other day in his rally last weekend? He said one of the big agendas on his list is term limits.
Yep. Term limits, big time.
He's going to impose term limits. Put that through the Congress. And you know who doesn't want that? All the old timers.
Yeah.
So, got to tell you, I think Trump will survive this just fine.
The only way you're going to get them to vote for term limits is if it doesn't take effect for like 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, when they're done with all their terms.
Yeah.
I think if anybody is responsible in Congress, who will vote for term limits. And the big question came up. I saw Joe Pags mention this. He says, he says, Joe Biden, who spent nearly 50 years in public service on the wages of a senator or a congressman, senator, whatever he was, all the way along. I don't know was he always in the Senate? Anyway, he says he's lived off of those wages for 45 plus years. He says, how is it he can afford 2 beach homes, and how is it he can afford, because the pay ain't that great.
No.
He said, that's like having a good paying job.
He didn't even pay for his vet. It was a birthday gift from his dad.
That's it.
Who was a car dealer for Chevrolet and Cadillac.
Yes. And so, you know what? I want to see the same rules applied, the effort being put into nail Trump on this sleeping with a porn star thing and paying her off in theory, supposedly.
Yeah.
I want to see the same effort put into nailing Biden for his connections to.
They've got the bank records, the money going from China into Biden accounts.
They do. That just came out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Strangely, just at that came out and was the morning news, and the afternoon news was Trump's going to be indicted. And so then Trump sucked up all the press.
Do you know since the indictment was announced, was it yesterday or the day before?
Yesterday, I believe.
Trump has shot up another 5 points in the poll. And it's like the more they persecute this guy, and that's what it is, guys.
Trump jokingly said during the 2016 election, I could walk out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody in the head.
Oh, man, people go nuts. You hear that? He wants to shoot people. I said, somebody said that to me, and I said, are you serious? Did you really think he was serious about with Trump? I wouldn't put it beyond him. I go, are you that stupid?
Yeah.
Are you dense?
But his points went up.
Chuck Thurston says, make the wage for holding a political office the going minimum wage. There it is, and see how long they want.
Maybe he should do one of his rallies in an orange jumpsuit just to see if that skyrockets him even
I
further.
heard. Who did I hear? Some pundit say the other day. Oh, it was after the indictment came down, so it was yesterday. He said, the best thing Trump could do, he says, get his mugshot taken, then use that mugshot for his campaign. And Trump with his mugshot shot on his all this stuff. So, folks, let me repeat this because we're slamming the left a lot because that's what we do. But let me put it this way.
Well, that's what you and I do. I don't
care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're liberal. I don't care if you're conservative. I don't care if you're independent or anything in between. Everybody needs to step out of their own little personal political box and look back
This is a travesty of justice.
And tell me that this needs to be done to a former president, that it needs
to be done to anybody.
And that it needs to be done to anyone. That it's, you tell me that this is the right thing to do, and I'll call you stupid to your face.
A, it's past the statute of limitations. B, the person who's supposedly wronged by it has already released a formal legal document saying that she was not anywhere near this.
From
This
7
never
years
happened.
ago. From 7 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she wrote it last week. So, yeah, there's a whole hell of a lot of dumb fuckery going on with this thing. And folks, you don't have to vote for Trump. You don't even have to like him, but you better like the way our system operates. If it's doing this to him, they can do it to anybody
Very easily.
Yeah. So
look at
all I gotta
all
say
these
on
people with the insurrection thing. All these people that they've jailed. They're just normal Joes. These aren't politicians. These aren't activists. These were truck drivers and carpenters and people just making a honest day's living that went to the rally and then walked down
Yep.
to the Congress
And
afterwards.
you had a
to the Capitol.
relative small amount. You had a couple hundred or more that rioted. You had over
And the
500,000
people that they have on
didn't.
film breaking windows, carrying ladders, having all that kind of stuff, they've all been identified as FBI people.
That's what I've seen that too. And
So they were planted there to create
oh,
this
get this.
imagery.
Anita Palmer just said,
And none of them have been prosecuted.
Trump also raised $40 million today, according to Fox. Yep. He's not going to go to jail for this.
No.
That's for sure. Yeah, they do, Chuck. They do it to anybody every day. That's our government for you. And right now,
and one of the cool things that came out of this, DeSantis right up front came out and said, this is a travesty of justice. The state of Florida will not assist in any way in extraditing a former president to New York.
That's right.
Screw New York.
Alan Dershowitz, yeah, he's got a lot to say. And Alan Dershowitz doesn't even like Trump, and he's a Democrat. But he has gone all the way along with this, saying, look, this all sucks. This is not the way this is supposed to work. And far back, months ago, years ago, I saw him saying stuff. Rush Limbaugh gave him that name, Turtle. McConnell.
Who?
Mitch McConnell got the nickname Turtle from Rush Limbaugh. Mitch McConnell, and yeah. So Mitch McConnell's been in Congress about 30 years too long. So,
I wouldn't say that. 40, maybe.
Maybe 40. So, there you go. Well, you know what? It's the end of the show. End of the show time, folks. We got 2 minutes to wrap it up here, Dave. Give any words of wild wisdom that you want to pass on to everybody tonight.
You know what, everybody? It's super easy to reach out each day and do some simple kindness for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Do something good for someone.
There you go. And I would
say, it pays forward.
And I would say, remember, 20 years from now, you'll regret more the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So cast off from the safe harbor, set your sails to the trade winds, explore,
take the path less trod.
Dream. I didn't talk during your quote. Explore, dream, discover. There you go. Now you can talk.
Carry a big stick.
Carry a big stick. There it is. All right, folks, we got to get out of here. Uncle Dave, see you later. Have a good weekend. Talk to you soon. See you Sunday morning. Everybody else, join us back here on Sunday morning for It's Sunday with Scotty and Rainey, if Rainey comes over this time. She doesn't always like getting up on Sunday morning anymore. So, we'll see what happens. So be here or be square. And I made up that rhyme myself, believe it or not. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want you all to have a good night and live long and prosper.